Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, news from the top level of the Navy. The Chief of Naval Operations and other officials at a recent event say the Sea Service needs to operate as though it is on a wartime footing. Plus, details of the proposed Tump-class battleships. The CNO talks details. Also, a torpedo designed to hunt down and destroy other torpedoes? We get a look at the Sea Spider. We've got all these stories and more in the latest in news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon, here on Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. When luminaries from the U.S. Navy gathered at the Surface Navy Association Symposium in Washington, D.C. last week, they had a lot of big topics to tackle. Shipbuilding, the Golden Fleet, and the concept of keeping the Sea Service on a, quote, wartime footing were central topics of conversation. Navy Times reporter Riley Cedar was on the scene to provide updates. Here's some of what he found.
Hi, this is Riley Cedar with Military Times. I'm here at the Surface Navy Association's 38th National Symposium. One of the themes that's been touched on this week is the concept of wartime footing, something that Navy Secretary John Phelan spoke about yesterday during his keynote address, which is essentially the idea that the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Maritime Industrial Base should be operating as though it's already in a war to basically prepare for an international armed conflict if there is to be one in the future. Today, CNO Admiral Daryl Cottle touched on that.
Let me start with a simple statement. The United States Navy must operate on a wartime footing. A wartime footing means decisions are driven by combat effectiveness, not convenience, not comfort, and not process for process sake. It means speed matters more than bureaucratic perfection. It means we must accept prudent risks now so that we don't pay catastrophic risk later. And it means leaders at every level are empowered and expected to act with initiative, creativity, and urgency. We do this not because we want conflict, but because deterrence only works when it is unmistakably credible. And credibility is built on readiness, lethality, and the proven ability to fight and win at sea. The primary job of the Chief of Naval Operations is to organize, train, and equip a Navy that is fit for the needs of today and tomorrow's fleet commanders. That means the CNO needs a clear vision of what the Navy is designed for, how it deters conflict, and how it fights as a fleet when called to arms. The Navy warfighting concept gives us that vision with purpose. It tells commanders how we intend to fight, where we will accept risk and where we will not. It is not meant to sit on a shelf. It is meant to be executed by fleets, squadrons, and ships at sea. It should be alive and well in the minds and planning of all of our fleet commanders at every level. The central idea is expanded maritime maneuver. Using the global maritime maneuver space across domains and time to gain and exploit sea control and impose sea denial. It leverages asymmetric options and non-traditional attack vectors to impose costs, deny objectives, and force adversaries back onto their feet. Practically, this means four things for the fleet. First, global maritime unity of effort. The next fight will not be neatly divided by combatant command boundaries. Naval forces must synchronize effects across a global maritime battle space, integrating actions across theaters to present a unified problem to the adversary. Second, seizing and maintaining the initiative. We're not waiting to absorb the first blow. We induce missteps, force reactions, and keep pressure on the spectrum of competition, crisis, and conflict. Third, asymmetric maritime operations. We generate disproportionate effects by exploiting vulnerabilities through deception, distribution, clever basing, and operational creativity, not simply by matching capability for capability. And finally, prevailing in protracted conflict. This concept assumes endurance matters. Fleet persistence, sustainment, and the ability to retain combat effect over time are decisive advantages, not afterthoughts.
Topic of discussion that's been mentioned a lot here at the Surface Navy Association's 38th National Symposium is the Golden Fleet, recently announced by the Trump administration. Today, Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Daryl Cottle spoke about the timeline of that fleet, the cost of that fleet, and the intended purpose of that fleet for the future of the U.S. Navy. Within that Golden Fleet is the Trump battleship, something that Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Daryl Cottle gave details about, specifically noting that it is a non-nuclear battleship.
As you heard yesterday from the Secretary, we are working to deliver the Golden Fleet. The fleet we build today that will serve our nation well into the future. The character of war in the 21st century is different and rapidly changing. This demands a fundamentally different force. The Golden Fleet Initiative marks a decisive shift in how we build, equip, and sustain our fleet to win across that spectrum of conflict. Far too long, we have relied on procuring a small number of exquisite assets and expecting them to do everything. That approach must evolve. The Golden Fleet will make critical industrial-based investments and deliver the largest fleet by tonnage in U.S. history, eclipsing even the fleets of World War II. This expansion will dramatically increase lethality by integrating manned and unmanned systems, exquisite and proliferated assets, and redefining how they're employed across the Navy and Marine Corps. The platform mix will balance capability against high and low, manned and unmanned, enabling modular, adaptive, and resilient force packages that can respond to multiple threats simultaneously. This is exactly aligned with the HEAD strategy. We're not replacing the current Navy with the Golden Fleet. The Golden Fleet is an and initiative, not an or wish list. Throughout the fall, the Secretary and I worked with the administration to develop new platforms with modern, threat-informed concepts of operations that will complement our current fleet and make it far more lethal going forward. You have seen these initiatives rolled out from the new battleship to the small surface combatant or frigate to the new medium landing ship. These platforms will join our other forces like our aircraft carriers, destroyers, submarines, and other amphibious ships. The battleship will anchor maritime fires and sea control in the most contested environments, massing durable combat power and absorbing punishment an adversary cannot match. The frigate will give us agile, distributed lethal surface combatants in volume, hunting, screening, escorting, and surging in ways that change the geometry of the fight. Together, they expand the maneuver space, complicate adversary targeting, and strengthen deterrence by making our lethality visible, credible, and undeniable. The Golden Fleet will give our combatant commanders and our president what they need for the fight of the future. It will also give our sailors the warfighting tools they deserve for the fights they will have to wage.
He said, are we planning to make the battleship nuclear powered so we can out-sustain and outlast our adversaries?
You know, the initial concept of the battleship, and first, I mean, battleship, that is so badass. I mean, it's like, I don't know, anybody against battleship? I mean, you know, so sometimes what happens, before I answer that, you know, when we say things, we just have biases, cognitive biases in our brain, and what comes to our brain is a thing that goes like, well, why is the Navy building that? Well, everything's an evolution, okay? We have naming conventions for these things. But imagine a ship that just brings all of the inability to target a ship with exquisite payload volume, okay? Very fast, can get anywhere in the world, can command and control operations, multi-mission, and is going to fall under the same counter-targeting umbrella as everything else I've got to protect. But then this thing can really mass fires. You know, a lot of times I get these questions about unmanned. You know, everybody thinks, you know, that's just, you know, I've got to be able to do this unmanned thing. Well, I'll go tell you there for the mathematicians out there, go figure out the combinations. You know, I can tell you there's a to the n in this answer that if I want to shoot 100 things from 100 things, or I want to shoot 100 things from one thing, which is harder? So where we look at survivability risk and maneuver risk, what I never hear the conversation is pulling it off risk. I've got to pull it off, okay? So there's an ability to how we actually fight from the sea that's got to be executed in practice. So that's why this idea of tailored forces and tailored assets and tailored offsets to enable the general purpose force like the battleship is so important, along with counter-targeting. But back to the question about nuclear power, we looked at that. You know, I think it's a logical question to think, hey, here's a big capital ship. It's going to be carrying a lot of load, in places that we don't necessarily need striking force from an air wing as the large ship there that's in command of the flotilla, if you will. Wouldn't it be logical to be nuclear powered? And that brings a tail to the construction of that just really fell outside the scope of what we want to do on the speed to get this thing in the water. And what you trade off with persistency that only nuclear power can do is you end up having, the ability to go produce that. It pushes the battleship into a time frame that just didn't meet the operational need of this ship.
When we come back, more from the Surface Navy Association's National Symposium in Washington, D.C. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. The Surface Navy's recent Washington Symposium was host to a number of emerging maritime defense systems. One interesting option, a torpedo that kills other torpedoes. Its advantage? It's got a rocket-boosted engine. Check out the Sea Spider, now in development from the German company TKMS.
This is Riley Cedar with Military Times. We're over here talking to Mark Rios with TKMS Atlas North America. Thanks for your time, Mark.
Thank you for joining us.
I just wanted to speak to you a little bit about this system right here, the Sea Spider, and wonder if you could tell me a little bit about it.
Well, our company, TKMS Atlas, we do a lot of work in the undersea warfare area. Our company is based in Germany. We've been working on an anti-torpedo torpedo called the Sea Spider. We've been developing this for about 10 years now, and already we have 3 NATO Navy customers. The Sea Spider is an anti-torpedo torpedo. It's launched from the ship, gets in the water. It has a rocket-propelled motor, so the Sea Spider travels very fast. It has its own sonar in the head of the vehicle in order to find the incoming torpedo and then intercepts to explode the torpedo, rendering the ship safe. This is a big change in surface ship defense. Normally, ships rely on countermeasures and speed to get away from enemy torpedoes. But this could very well be one of the first real applications of hard kill against enemy torpedoes. We want to get the torpedo, our torpedo, away from the ship as quickly as possible and intercept the enemy torpedo is far away from this ship. So rocket-propelled engine gives us that. Deck launch is one capability. We have a design where there will be 4 weapons on one launcher, and there would be one launcher on either side of the ship. So it could be operated from the deck, or there could be some other ways that through compressed air, it could be launched over the side of the ship. It's a solid propellant, and it burns from the front. We kept it simple so that it would be easy to handle. In other words, not liquid propellant. So that way it has a long shelf life on the ship before it needs to be maintained again. The system is designed and built predominantly in Germany right now. The rocket motor is being designed and tested in Canada, and already 3 NATO navies have signed up in order to buy it: the German Navy, the Netherlands Navy, and the Canadian Navy.
Is there any interest from the U.S. Navy, and what do you intend to provide them?
So we've had several meetings with not only U.S. defense companies, large companies, but also surface Navy leadership about this capability, and they do seem interested. They want to hear more.
And what's next on the horizon? What else do you guys have coming up?
Well, we're trying to get the U.S. Navy and other allies excited about this program. We think that it being able to deliver and outfit the fleet in only 3 years from now, we're giving a really good capability to what we perceive as a gap in our Navy ship defense.
Up next, do sailors get enough rest? Making sure sailors on duty get enough sleep to stay alert on long watches has been an issue the Navy has been tackling in recent years. CNO Daryl Cottle addressed the topic in his recent remarks at SNA 2026.
The idea of well-rested sailors or more ready sailors drove the decision to move them off ships. Isn't it counterproductive to deploy readiness? Must we instead consider how we can improve restfulness and readiness at sea?
Oh, yes. Every community of practice, every type commander out there over the last, I'll say 20 years really, has really worked very hard to this very question. And, we found in particular for the Black Shoe Navy, we're just wearing ourselves out. Our watch bills were oversubscribed. The watch structure of the way we do our watch rotations were not optimized for sleep. The way we train and conduct our daily routine was not optimized again to be well rested. So a lot of us went to different, pilot programs to trial and error this, and it has since landed on some structure that is designed to improve that. And when we pull the string on whether or not we've been successful, I would give us probably B minus, C plus, in that even though on paper it's designed to allow sailors to rest better, in practice, I don't know that we've achieved the effect. In the surface Navy in particular, has leaned way forward on circadian rhythm understanding, lighting, mealtime, wearing, like Oura rings and other wearables to really try to get a point on what's next on getting sailors properly rested. And some of this comes down to leadership, schedule adherence, execution, doing routine things routinely, and not being so reactive so that we're able to actually sustain the thing that we have built to allow sailors to rest. Some of this is some discipline on when you go to bed, you go to sleep, and not sit there and watch movies and game. So some of that's baked into, treating sleep as an important weapon system within your own personal account. So there's a lot there, Ron, but I completely agree with this. And there's champions on this, and we've got work to do. But I think the Surface Navy and the other type commanders in the Navy are dedicated to get this right. The last thing we're going to do is have somebody fall asleep when it matters. That's just not going to work.
When we come back, our financial expert returns with her latest tips. Stay tuned. Welcome back. On this episode of Money Minute, Jeanette Mack from Navy Federal Credit Union returns with her latest tips for financial success. Have a look.
What would you do if a pile of money landed in your lap? Aside from thanking your lucky stars, most people would probably splurge. Think of your tax return as that pile of money. You might not splurge, but you might just as easily spend it before thinking to save it. Your tax return isn't found money. It's your hard-earned money that the government withheld during the year being returned to you. So when you think of it like that, hopefully it motivates you to put it where it'll do the most good for you, a savings account or tackling debt. If you don't have an emergency fund set up, now's the time. You should have at least 3 months of living expenses set aside always. If you can, put your return into a money market savings account. That's even better. Or if you don't need the money right away, to get the highest interest rate for your money, go for a certificate of deposit or CD. Then you're really maximizing your returns. If you've got high debt, use your return to pay it down or pay it off completely. At the end of the day, the smartest thing to do with any extra money is to use it to further your financial goals. Save the splurging for pizza.
To get more coverage of military and defense topics, get behind the controls of your warship and steer towards militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more headlines. And to be the most up-to-date sailor on shore leave, sign up for our early bird brief compiled each morning to bring you the most recent news. Finally, if social media is where you collect open source intelligence, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X. And for you junior troops, we're on TikTok, so go follow us there as well. When we return, Defense Dollars is back with news from around the defense industry. Don't go away. Welcome back. What defense companies were moving the markets this week? It's time for the latest installment of Defense Dollars, brought to you by our partners at the Cheddar Network. Check it out.
Welcome to Defense Dollars, a weekly update on the defense and aerospace markets around the world and what is making the numbers move. Let's dive in. Defense stocks have shown strong performance in the opening weeks of 2026. Global aerospace and defense shares have climbed amid proposals for significantly higher U.S. military spending, as well as heightened geopolitical uncertainty. Early year optimism around a proposed $1.5 trillion U.S. defense budget sparked broad sector gains as investors anticipated increased contracting opportunities as well as long-term funding. Individual companies have posted notable moves as well so far this year. Huntington Ingalls Industries, for example, gained more than 6% following budget-related momentum, reflecting growing confidence in shipbuilding and aerospace contract pipelines. Investor enthusiasm has also been reinforced as of late by strong capital inflows into defense technology startups, as well as AI-driven military systems, signaling that new funding is moving into both established contractors and emerging innovators within the sector. While performance has varied across specific companies and subsectors, the broader trend in early 2026 has been decisively positive, driven by geopolitical tensions and expectations of expanded government defense spending. Meanwhile, AST Space Mobile, the satellite provider building a space-based cellular network, has secured a prime contract position on the U.S. Missile Defense Agency's SHIELD program, this being a part of the Pentagon's Golden Dome defense strategy. The multi-year award Indefinite Delivery, Indefinite Quantity contract gives AST eligibility to compete for future task orders, supporting research, development, and engineering, as well as operations to advance U.S. national security systems. This announcement sent AST Space Mobile stock higher as investors reacted to the company's expanded role in the defense sector. Analysts say the SHIELD contract does not guarantee immediate revenue, but it does validate AST's dual-use satellite technology as a potential contributor to command, control, and advanced sensing applications. Experts note this could open new opportunities as the company continues deploying its low Earth orbit network and expanding manufacturing capacity. And one more before you go. The first Trump-class battleship could cost as much as $22 billion if ordered today or by 2030, according to a Congressional Budget Office estimate. CBO analyst Eric Labs said the price range depends on the ship's weight and design features, with heavier designs pushing costs even higher. If the Navy delays orders until the year 2030, the Budget Office says the lead ship's costs could top $21 billion, with follow-on vessels running $10 billion to $15 billion each. The figures make the proposed battleship one of the most expensive U.S. warships ever conceived, rivaling costs of modern aircraft carriers. The estimates were released during a Navy symposium as part of discussions about President Trump's Golden Fleet naval expansion plan. Many key design and procurement details remain undecided, meaning final costs could shift. The Budget Office also warned that industry challenges like workforce shortages and supply chain issues could push price tags even higher. And that wraps up your defense dollars for this week. Join us on cheddar.com and defensenews.com for more stories like these.
Well, that's all we have time for in this episode. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.